Hello and welcome to Freethought Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Larry Rhodes.
And I'm Faithless Forrest, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and free of supernatural beliefs.
Today's show topic will be the true foundation of our democratic republic. Thanks, Athena.
Thanks, Athena. We often hear the assertion that America is founded on Christianity, but we are left confused.
But first we want to tell you a little bit about our sponsors. The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup or at a bar or eatery here in Knoxville. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's in the Old City, starting around 5:30. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. And as Matt Dillahunty at the Atheist Experience in Austin, Texas as well says, everyone is welcome for our happy hours for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday, we hold a book club discussion, and the fourth Sunday there is usually a get-together we call Reflections, featuring a potluck lunch at someone's home.
Later in the show we'll give you our websites to visit for additional information, including times and locations of the show and meetups.
All right, well, let's go to In the News. There's interesting things in the news. From time to time, I get and read newsletters from other secular organizations and learn of interesting developments. From the January newsletter of the Sacramento Reason, so it's I guess it's Sacramento, I think. I don't spell well. And Reason.
Newsletter.
It's a newsletter. We have the following headline: Church of Flying Spaghetti Monster. By any standard one can come up with, the FMS religion is as real and legitimate as any other. And that's the point. See the miracle appearance on a grilled cheese sandwich, and other, prominent public sightings of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. But the Sacramento Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster has made it into the CBS News report, and it's regarding the first city council opening with an FMS prayer.
Okay, I think we have a graphic for that.
Yeah, so the member Steve Vincent said in his prayer in part, "God, I'm not sure if you're there. You're an agenda item on a government meeting. I'm not sure that that is what you had in mind for prayer, God. I'm not sure what the point of praying is, and I have to wonder if our non-believing neighbors are being respected."
And there's another graphic with a long URL at the top. I think that's it.
Yeah, Sacramento, CBSLocal.com, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
That's a long one to try to write down, but you can visit our Facebook page for a link if you can, which you can simply click. On Facebook, we are Freethought Forum Knoxville.
All righty, and we encourage you to leave show questions and comments there. All right. Well, last year we were reporting about how women were not allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia, and that there was a protest they were organizing, and it still seems to be ongoing. The website, October26driving.com, has new images posted, including one from as recent, actually here even in January, but there was an interesting one on December 28th. It had both Arabic and English, and with the following demand. Can we get the image up? Yeah. Technical difficulties. So here is this woman saying, "I demand my basic civil rights to drive my vehicle in my own country. Enough's enough." And
we wish you luck, ladies.
All righty. So I guess there's something from the Church of Satan in the news. Can you help us with that?
Go over to it, sure.
I guess the Church of Satan is founded by an Anton Levy or something like that, and
right. And it's
there's
in Oklahoma apparently that this is going on. The Ten Commandments went up, of course, on the courthouse lawn, and the Church of Satan decided to come in, and they're going to try to put up their own monument. Satanic Temple unveils 7-foot goat-headed Baphomet statue for the Oklahoma Capitol. The Satanic Temple, a religious group based in New York City, on Monday unveiled their design for a monument they hope to erect at the Oklahoma State House. The 7-foot-tall monument would include a goat-headed Baphomet figure, not Satan, by the way, Baphomet, which looks like a satyr, sitting cross-legged on a stone slab flanked by 2 small smiling children. The monument would also include quotes from poets like Lord Byron and William Blake. Many people don't know that Byron was an atheist, non-believer. The monument has been designed to reflect the views of Satanists in Oklahoma and beyond, the quote goes. The statue, the statue will serve as a beacon calling for compassion and empathy among all creatures. The statue will also have a functional purpose, as a chair where people of all ages may sit on the lap of Satan for inspiration and contemplation. Spokesman Lucian Greaves explains. The group offered to donate a monument last month after State Representative Mike Ritz, a Broken Arrow Republican, and conservative Christians were allowed to erect a 10 Commandments monument on state grounds. Lawmakers in Oklahoma, however, insisted the Satanists should not be given the same treatment as Christians. In other words, right there, they're calling their religion better than other religions, and they should get preferential treatment from the government, which is illegal and unconstitutional.
In fact, I would put it more strongly that the Christians are demanding that their view, and only their view, be subsidized by the government. That's by right. Being given a home. Free riders.
Right. This is a faith-based nation, Representative Earl Sears of Bartlesville said, and a faith-based state, both of which are obviously not true. I think it's very offensive that they would contemplate or even have this kind of conversation. In other words, we can't have a conversation of ideas if you already know the truth, and the truth is the substance of your religion. Everybody else just needs to take a hike. So, so much for democracy and representation. After other groups, including PETA and the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, asked for their own displays, the Oklahoma City Capitol Preservation Commission placed a moratorium on new monuments at the State House. But the Satanic Temple insists erecting a monument of their own is within their constitutional rights, as it is.
Well, if the government is creating a forum, they can't pick and choose based on content.
Right. Let's take a moment here to remind our audience this is a call-in show. This particular show is all about you. We're going to be filling in as we can between calls, but we encourage all of our callers to call in, or all of our viewers to call in and start a discussion. Let's get some ideas out there. Numbers at the bottom of the screen.
All right. Well, today I wanted to speak a little bit about some of the things I had learned while reading history books, and where I learned about the true foundation of our democratic republic. And I guess I'm going to want to assert that if you want to thank a deity for that, that deity is Athena. So let's bring up our foundation of the democratic republic slide here. And we're going to meet 3 important names: Solon, and I may mangle these pronunciations, Cleisthenes and Pericles. And these people, they were, and that's approximately chronological order. Solon, it would be the earliest, Cleisthenes followed, and Pericles sort of wrapped up the process.
When was Solon alive? Well,
from Wikipedia, we have an estimated date from 638 BC to 558 BC. He was an Athenian statesman, lawmaker, and poet. And he was prominent in a time when the Athenian society was undergoing a kind of problem. The Athenians had a rule where you couldn't sell property, and so property owners would have tenant farmers work their land, and there would be rent associated with that, and if the tenants weren't able to pay the rent, in a sense they became then kind of property themselves to pay the debt to the landowner. So this emerged a gradual serfdom-like system. And as more and more people became in debt to fewer and fewer, it became obvious, even to those who were, let's say, the wealthy and in charge, that the pressure was building and this pressure cooker was going to explode.
It was an untenable situation.
It was untenable.
For the long view.
Well, viewers, we have a call. Larry, why don't you address our caller?
Sure. Welcome to the show. May we have a name or a nickname?
Jeff Rick from Ontario.
I think you said Jeffrey. I'm not
It's
hearing.
Jeffrey from Ontario.
Okay. Welcome back to the show. You're a prior caller. What would you like to talk about today?
For a frequent caller, American is a Christian nation. I don't think so according to the written Constitution. However, too many Americans don't really believe that. It's like the same people who say they read the Bible but don't because they don't particularly believe what the Bible actually says. They're called Christians, of course.
Uh-huh.
We're going to try to, we can't hear you very well, we're going to try to turn up our monitor a little bit. But yeah, I always like to say, can you imagine what a Christian Constitution would actually read like? You can compare that to the Constitution that the Iraqi government founded after the war, and they had to create a new Constitution. Every single paragraph started with, and for Allah and in His honor and
glory.
And the glory of His Prophet Muhammad. And everything was said was referenced to their God. And we don't have any of that in our Constitution. Our Constitution expressly forbids that the government recognize any particular religion over any other religion, or religion itself over non-religion.
Yeah, that's slightly a disadvantage because, like most European countries, which the American writers of the Constitution didn't care for their way of doing religion, they all had one religion, which means all other religions were suppressed. Mm-hmm. So when they entered the latter half of the 20th century, they got tired of the existing religion, but there wasn't much else to be tired of. So they're very secular, very atheistic in Europe, mm-hmm. where the United States, which had free reign on whatever religion you want to promote this week.
Yeah. Well, we've only got one religion, and it's not really enforced that you have to go by law. A lot of people get really tired of that, especially if all the profits of the religion are going to the state. Now in America, we have free enterprise, and none of the proceeds from the religion go to the state, and anybody who wants to get into the business of religion is protected as far as their expression and their practice by the law and the Constitution. So we have 16,000 different religions and new ones starting up all the time.
Yeah, you pick your religion of the week.
Yeah, you create your own. If you don't like the one you're currently in, you start a new one.
Yeah, invent one out of nowhere.
Right.
I think L. Ron Hubbard did that very well.
Mm-hmm. He did. And I think it was, the guy from the middle of the 18th century, 19th century.
Oh, Joseph Smith.
No.
Wrong invented religion?
I'm talking about a quote, but
okay.
I can't remember. He says that...
Robert Ingersoll?
Yeah, Ingersoll, I think, said that we create so many gods, we created millions because the raw materials are so cheap.
The raw materials are so cheap.
Yeah, human understanding.
Yeah.
Do you realize what a Christian Constitution would have to read according to the Bible? Mm-hmm. It would be pro-abortion, pro-incest, marriages between a man and 200, 300, 400 women, or 2 or 3 or 4.
Right. Mm-hmm. Or to their
the pro-incest really offends me. Pro-slavery, of course. I mean, mm-hmm. without question. I mean, this is a constitution based on the dictates of the Bible.
Yeah. Well,
I think the pro-abortion part would really piss off a lot of Christians
mm-hmm.
who think the Bible says no, abortion is wrong, and it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, the original Constitution was, if not supported, then at least allowed slavery. But I really doubt that very many people who would like to say that America is a Christian nation would like to go back to that particular time in our history.
I think up here we call them cafeteria Christians.
Yeah.
They just pick and choose the good parts and completely ignore what it really says.
Yeah.
Well, I would have to say, Jeffrey, we hope that they ignore most of that stuff.
I'm glad they do.
It's actually people like the Westboro Baptists who have read their Bible and have chosen not to ignore some things. I think part of it is that they know they've got a money-making scheme for that.
But they're more biblically sound as far as their
Yeah, that's
foundation of
unfortunate.
their
But
religion.
one thing they do seem to be missing is that, God said fags are bad. Paul said fags are bad. But Jesus seems to have been a bit of a homosexual himself, if you read Mark.
Yeah.
That's the first gospel written, so let's assume that it's more accurate than the other gospels. And Mark, in chapter 14, 51, actually 48 to 53, kind of makes out that Jesus is gay, and he has a gay boyfriend.
Oh, you got to kind of wonder about that naked guy running around in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah, well, Jesus wasn't wearing any clothes, and when he hugs the guy, he takes the guy's loincloth,
Yeah.
well, at least he's not naked, and chases the guy off, scoots him off with his little butt into the night, which is very cold. If you think about it, Judas is acting like a displaced lover. I can find the guy, well, the one I kiss is my ex-boyfriend, and that's the one you can arrest.
Yeah.
But,
All right.
of course, they
Because,
can have
did he rat him out on what he said? No, because he was a preacher. Everybody knew what Jesus was saying, the character. Now, I personally do not believe that this Jesus character was even real.
Well, I suspect that he was more than real. There's actually many of them. In other words, no one
several
person.
of them, yes. If you read Matthew 5, it sounds like Mr. T, or Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, the children's show host.
Yeah.
And then you read Matthew 10, and it sounds like Mr. T.
Yeah. Well,
Pity the fool.
and
I
that's
do
fun.
not come in peace.
And what's
Like that
funny
thing.
is after he gets crucified and then he comes back, none of the apostles themselves even recognize him.
Yeah,
Which
well, after you've been dead for 3 or 4 days, you look
Well,
different.
but I mean, they
We all
literally
do.
did not know it was him until he talked for a while and tried to convince them. So it could have been a different person altogether. Is what I'm saying.
All right.
All in all, it makes for a really nice story, just not believable.
Yeah.
Well, Jeffrey, I'm often
Jeff Rick.
Jeff Rick. I'm always a little bit, on behalf of other Americans, a little flattered when non-Americans talk about our Constitution, especially when they'll just say the Constitution without saying something like the American Constitution. So, how were you exposed to our Constitution?
I grew up in the great state of Maine, central Maine.
Okay, so
My family moved down when I was 2 years old. So I grew up and I was a neighbor to a guy named Stephen King. He was across the river.
Oh, really?
all right.
Was he scary?
So I'm actually a Mainer. I mean, I can do that accent real quick because for me it's quite natural.
All right, I got you.
Well, that's where I grew up, but I'm a Canadian by birth. I've always been a Canadian citizen. And about 35 years ago, I moved back to Toronto for a better job since I was washing dishes back in Maine, which is really a tourist area. And, well, I still think of myself as American. That's where I was educated. That's where I grew up.
All right.
Yeah, I do talk like an American at times, but I am a Canadian citizen.
All right. Well, I guess, so I didn't actually get the full foreign insight that perhaps I was trolling for.
I'm sorry.
All right.
I'm always pro-American, let's put it that way. I mean, I have my American background.
Cool.
All right. Well, I think we should all try and be pro-human, and that other stuff should be just a little de-emphasized.
Yeah, I'd like to promote more the Second Amendment. You have a right to keep and bear arms to support a militia.
There we go.
And the court system says very clearly a militia is owned and organized by a government entity,
Yeah.
not private entities.
Yeah.
So I don't see how the NRA can say everyone should get guns, because that just leads to a lot of dead people.
They just want to sell guns they're in the business of supporting gun manufacturers, really. So they can say whatever they want to. And they just like religions do, they can create their own religion out of whole cloth and for whatever their ends are. And of course, the NRA is to support the manufacturers of guns.
I also heard some statistics that say American homes owning guns is actually dropping, but Americans who own guns just own a lot of guns.
Oh, interesting. In other words, they're
They don't own one or two guns. They own 1 or 2 dozen.
so it's becoming kind of a fanatic-like
Yeah, you got the fanatics,
population.
the sensible people.
Yeah. So, Jeffrick, there's a sort of a trivia question that I'll give you and our viewers as well. If you don't get the answer, we'll see if some other viewers can. In the U.S. Constitution, there are only 2 clauses that have something that explains why they're there. So the Second Amendment says a well-regulated militia being essential for goodness, I can't get it verbatim, but being essential for the defense of our nation, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And so there's a sentence that explains why the following sentence is in our Constitution. Where else in the Constitution is there a sentence that explains why another part of it is there? There's only one other that I know of. Perhaps some viewers will find
I think that's the First Amendment, to guarantee a free press or guarantee a democracy, a free and open press will not be abridged.
I don't think it actually says to guarantee. It merely says the right of the people to speak and assemble shall not be abridged, and nor the right of the press.
No, the right of the press.
Yeah. So
okay.
the Second Amendment, you know, has that sentence that's sort of a lead in explaining why. And the other section, the other justification that I'm referring to is not in the amendments. It's in the original unamended portion of the Constitution.
Oh, the preamble?
Well, the preamble, you can maybe make an argument, but it's then actually explaining the reason for the whole document. But elsewhere in the document, there is a sentence that explains why the stuff that follows immediately is there. All right. Well, we're going to leave that as a trivia question, and
okay, I hope somebody else can answer it, because apparently
all right.
I can't.
Well, Jeffrey. Sorry, I wrote Jeffrey, and now it's a hopeless mistake. It's been carved into stone or papyrus.
J-E-F-F-R-I-C-K. You'll find me at the Rational Response Squad, where I post a lot.
Okay.
And check in with us once in a while, because I promote your site whenever I can.
All right.
Very good.
And I'll confess, I've gone to the Rational Response Squad's website, but it's been a few years. And as I recall,
put in some posts.
I'm sorry, say again?
I said, come on back and put in some posts.
All right. I remember reading, I think I've registered so I could post, but I remember reading how, you know, they'd had a problem with people trolling and they had to purge. And this
Every site has to put up with trolls.
Yeah.
We don't have too many these days. Apparently they got tired of us.
Okay.
We have trouble with spammers, people who want to advertise our product.
Yeah.
Our moderators kick them out as soon as possible.
All right. Jeffrick, let us say thank you much. We'll clear the line, and perhaps we'll get some more discussions about Constitution and the role of deities in the forming thereof.
And of course, you're welcome to call
It's
back
always a
in.
pleasure talking to you, gentlemen. Have a pleasant year ahead of you.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Well, this is Freethought Forum, and we're a call-in show, and we hope we get a few more. I'm trying to remember where we left off.
Talking about Salon.
So we were beginning with, I was trying to set the stage for the social pressures that created the need for a change in government in ancient Greece. So we had concentration of ownership, we had a lot of poor people that had become essentially indentured servants, and the pressure was building to where even the people in power realized there's going to be a revolution and this may not end well for us. And they asked their wisest man, Solon, to form a new government for them. Can we get the slide with just Solon on it? And at least some sources attribute Solon to have created the world's first constitutional government. And in it, he created both laws, as well as he divided and assigned. He divided the members of the government into different houses and assigned them roles. Mm-hmm. And in particular, there is a portion of the government called, and I may mangle the pronunciation. It's called the Areopagus. And
that's all one word. Areopagus.
Yeah, Areopagus. And the Areopagus had the job of interpreting the law. So if there was some debate about does this law apply in this situation, they were the ones who ruled on that. And I think they had some degree of ruling on the justice of the law in the particular situation as well. And
this was 600 years before Christ.
Oh yeah.
Before Jesus lived.
Yeah.
So these ideas have been around for a while, just not implemented very often.
And we would recognize that in our own government. Our government is called is it tripartite because of the 3 divisions. And for our viewers, especially youngsters in school, that would be the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. Right. Now, in Ceylon's government, they also had lower houses that whose size was very large, because this was rather direct democracy. All citizens could come and participate in the promulgation and creation of laws.
Right. So let's talk about direct democracy, pure democracy. A lot of people say that America is a democracy, but it's not really it's not a pure democracy. It's a representative. It's a constitutional representative government, or republic.
Well, in the case of the Greek democracy, they would have hundreds and hundreds show up, and they had a rule that, they kept listening while anyone was, who hadn't spoken had a chance to speak. So you can imagine, debate on laws and bills could go on for days, and did.
And then when it came time to actually decide on him, they would actually get a vote of all the people to decide on any particular issue. A true democracy wouldn't have votes on a representative who would then get together with other representatives and vote on something. In a true democracy, everybody would vote basically on every issue that came up. But the thing about it is, everybody, would you call it, they weren't all equal. There was a class that was senators.
We would say, well, in our modern language usage, we would say there would be an aristocratic family, and then there would be families that are of more middle class, and then poorer families. It's not clear to me if property ownership was essential for citizenship at this time or not, but it seems to imply that ownership of real estate property may have been part of the test to whether or not you could be a citizen. And of course, citizens were only male. So Ceylon's reforms, it's thought, were inscribed on these wooden slabs or cylinders, and they were so they sat upright, and you could like wheel them around so you could look at them to reference them. And because they were written down like that, it meant they were given an air of permanency. And they were on display where all of the people meeting could see them and refer to them.
It's kind of like the Code of Hammurabi.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. Hammurabi must be older, because Hammurabi is referred to as the world's oldest codex, written laws.
And they were literally carved in stone.
Now, what's different about Ceylon's reforms is that, in a sense, he wasn't just handing out laws. He was also designing a government and creating division of powers and balancing the interests of different groups of people.
So that no one particular group would have all the power, like authoritarian governments have been in autocracies.
I would say that it's better to characterize what he did as diluting the power of the aristocracy so that it wasn't as powerful, and preventing it from, and maybe trying to lay barriers against it becoming too powerful again, because that's what created this atmosphere of near revolution. So, from Wikipedia here, there's something about, so originally these laws, or axons, were recorded on this turntable, but apparently they weren't the first set of laws. There were, Draco had made laws, and Draco is where we get the phrase draconian law. Draco had, I think, famously said something like, you know, he made the punishment for stealing a loaf of bread death because he couldn't think of anything more severe. He was very, very much in the deterrence mode rather than trying to, let's say, rehabilitate.
What part of the world was Draco from?
Oh, he was also from Greece.
Oh, okay.
And I think he would have been like the generation before. The generation before would have seen things like strong kings, and then they began to settle into something like representative government or democracy. But it is with Solon that we begin to see things that look a lot more like the government we have now, with division of power, saying these are the rules by which we make rules. So Solon repealed all of Draco's laws except those relating to homicide. Now, with the passage of time, even most of Solon's laws have been lost. There are fragmentary comments that show up in other writers. Was there something I was going to point to here? All right. Well, it's interesting to think about the size of the government. They would have bodies where there would be 500 members sitting, 300 members. And this is all in a day before you had like voice amplification. Imagine trying to speak loud enough for hundreds of people to hear in an open air environment. They actually met at a place called the Agora, and Agora means marketplace. And when we talk about the marketplace of ideas, that also stems linguistically from the Greek tradition, where people would conduct the business of government in something like an open air market.
We're getting close to the middle of the show, or if not past it. Would you like to go ahead and take the break now? Or?
Sure. Okay. Let's do that mid-program break.
Okay. Before we go, I'm going to make one little comment about democracy. Democracy, although it's a wonderful system, can backfire on you. Like if you consider Egypt or Middle East, or in countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, they finally got a new government, or got the ability to vote, and the first thing they did was vote in all their clerics, and then all of a sudden democracy went out the window, and it was back to authoritarian government again, autocracy. So you've got to be careful about these, and this is one of the reasons why you have to have a good foundational constitution that will protect the rights of the citizens against this type of thing.
And when we get to the next famous ancient Greek person, we'll talk about how he tried to put in place systems to prevent exactly the problem you talked about.
In case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock Eastern Time on this community access TV and streaming worldwide on the web at ctvknox.org.
This is a call-in show, and we are live today. It's January 7th, and viewers can call in now on the number on the screen with short questions and comments, and call in now while we go to the informative break. Now, we've gotten a message that there is a call right now.
Let's go ahead and
do we want to do it?
Call.
All right, I'll speak. Hello, caller. This is Freethought Forum TV. Can you give us a name or a nickname? And please speak up so that our microphone system will bring you into the studio.
I'm aware that your microphone takes a few seconds in order to get the volume correct.
Hello, I think I recognize the voice. And who are you?
Caller?
All right,
hey,
caller. Great. So, give us your short comment or question.
Well, I was on hold for a few seconds, so I'm not really sure if topic is up to date. The history of democracy is all very, very interesting. But the question on the screen is America? Oh gosh, I lost it. It was on the screen just a second ago.
Christian nation?
I swear it was. Yeah, is America a Christian nation?
Yeah.
And I didn't know if you'd already covered that prior, because I called in late. I apologize.
Yeah. If you missed the beginning of the show,
Yes.
the title slide said, if you want to thank a god for our democratic republic, should you be thanking Athena? Because it is from Athens where we get the kind of government we have. And that's the case I'm making today.
In answer, the words no, it's not a Christian nation.
Say again?
And therefore, we're making the point that it's not a Christian nation, and now we're going into detail about why not.
Yeah.
Christianity and all of most religions are all authoritarian.
So, Mr. Caller, if by America we mean our form of government, and is that Christian? The answer is going to be clearly no.
Okay. Well, I wasn't sure if I'd missed that part, but I thought that Madison, took care of all that question about it being a Christian nation.
Unfortunately, many people haven't read that. The Christians don't even read their Bible, much less James Madison, like his memorial and remonstration.
And some churches don't want you to read anything other than church-approved propaganda. They wouldn't allow them to read.
Well, what I was getting at, I thought in the Treaty of Tripoli, it was specifically stated that it was not a Christian nation, and therefore the issue settled.
The verbiage of the Treaty of Tripoli says this nation is not in any way founded, or America is not in any way founded on the Christian religion.
And it was universal. It was universally passed by the Congress without a dissenting vote. And that particular Congress included a lot of the founding fathers.
Okay.
Yeah, it was signed by the second president. It was negotiated during George Washington's term, but it was ready for signature by the time that John Adams had become president, the second president.
So if it comes down to if it is a Christian nation, the answer would be no.
Resoundingly no, right.
And I assume that there's nobody saying that it's a Muslim nation. I mean,
Not yet.
As far as religions go.
Not yet.
And Mormon, no Mormon that has the, gosh, what would you call it?
Tamara.
Chutzpah?
Stones.
Tamara.
Say that it's a Mormon nation.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So is there anything left?
Well, the thing about it is Mormons consider themselves Christians. So if they say it's a Christian nation, they're referring to Mormonism.
Well,
I see.
Well, caller, I believe that we should call ourselves an Athenian nation because that's our form of government.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well,
Well, there was a God mentioned in the founding documents, wasn't there?
Not in the Constitution.
in the preamble, they mention a creator.
There's no creator in our Constitution.
These rights
Wait a
are
minute,
given.
you seem to be having a disagreement there.
Yeah, and Larry has slipped into thinking. Larry has slipped into thinking about the Declaration of Independence, and there we have the mention of a creator.
Okay, my bad.
And the phrase that they use is consistent with the usage of deists, where they talk about a creator that's not from the Book of Jehovah, and not Jesus' daddy.
So there was a deity mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, they talk about God and nature's God.
Well, that would
nature's
be a
God
yes, right?
God. Yes. Yes.
Okay. And the nature's God is usually meant to be...
I think that was a phrase that was deemed acceptable by both the Christians involved and the non-Christians involved in the writing of the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, okay. Okay. So if it came down...
It was ecumenical enough that they could all sign on.
I see. But nature's God, wouldn't that refer to that time period, a particular group of people?
Deists.
Yeah. Well, I know Thomas Paine would use that verbiage. Now, Thomas Paine was not one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence.
No, he was not. I guess not. How about Jefferson?
Well, Jefferson is one of the three persons who was on the committee to write the Declaration, and his hand wrote most of it, probably 90% of it.
Okay, so...
And we've got to realize that the founding fathers lived about 100 years before Darwin came along, and there was no real explanation about why humans were so different from the animals.
Okay.
And there was no explanation, so when you don't have an explanation, a lot of times you just turn to God.
Okay. Well, since God was, since the question was, is it a Christian nation? Apparently, y'all are saying, no, it's not. And then we know it's not a Muslim or a Mormon, hopefully the Mormons were not around. I mean, they weren't around at that time. It's just too sad that they're around now. But so if God is mentioned, is there any sort of religious leaning that y'all can come to as far as the founding of the country?
Well, if by country we mean our form of government, it is Greek and Roman.
I mean America.
And what does it mean to found America, though? We can talk about the Pilgrims. There is a case that Christians make about something called the Mayflower Compact. Have you ever heard of the Mayflower Compact, Mr. Caller?
I understand, that would be a long time before the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. So I'd be more along the lines of saying pish on that.
Yeah, well, the point being, though, is what does it mean to found America? You know, there are people who left Europe fleeing religious persecution, looking for freedom here in America, and the Puritans who came on the Mayflower are cited as an example of that. And when they got here,
I don't think they were trying to get away from religious persecution as much as they wanted to get over here so they could religiously persecute somebody else.
You've hit the nail right between the eyes.
There's some truth in what you say.
Yes.
Okay. Well, anyway, I was trying to say, if it's not atheist, if it's not Christian, is there anything that America leads towards? And apparently,
I would say
atheism. America is an atheist country.
It's a secular country.
Is it?
Yes.
Well, our Constitution is a very secular document.
Okay.
And to the extent that it defines our government, it is secular.
But
it
secular
protects.
isn't a religion, right?
No.
And secular would mean.
Would you say that deism is a religion?
Apparently, according to Wikipedia, I guess it is.
And if by religion we generally mean that you have a conclusion about the universe around us that involves a deity, that there is a deity, that's what it would mean to be a religion.
You mean like nature's God?
Yes. Now,
okay, so what you guys are telling me is if America's not Christian, not Muslim, and not Mormon, thank God, then it might be closer to deist than it is secular, because secular is not really any sort of religion. So if America was going to be closer to one or the other, you're saying it would be deism.
No, could you say, for the sake of argument, that deists could actually create a government that was not founded on any religion, even their own?
I'm sorry if I don't really understand that question.
I don't even know what founded means here in this context.
I mean, they wrote a document that never mentioned a god at all. They put one mention of a nature's god, basically, in the Declaration, not the Declaration.
The Declaration of Independence refers to God.
Declaration of Independence. But
oh, goodness.
They're not founding the country itself. They're saying that our rights are God-given, and they don't specify any particular God. But then they create this document for the government to be founded on that has no mention of it in it at all. The Declaration of Independence is not a founding document. The Constitution.
Listen, I could have stopped you a while back. I agree with you. You know, there's only a couple mentions of God's, man's created by his creator and nature's God. As far as I know, there's only two references. Okay,
well, the point that I'm trying to make, let's say you get Bob, Tom, and Bill together. They're all Christians, but they decide to make a market corporation. They create the market. They decide not to bring their religion into this corporation, and they found a secular organization. That's what I'm saying that the founding fathers did. A lot of them were Christians, a lot of them were deists, a lot of them, I don't know, Church of England?
Yeah.
But they decided not to put their religion, their religious beliefs in the document.
So there's not anyone that would be close. Well, that's what I was calling to ask. So there's not anyone that would be closer, where it got a country that was basically created by these people of diverse religions.
Yes.
And offering the freedom of democracy to those people who wish to live within bounds of the country, right? And that the government would not impose their religion, even if there was some hint of religion at the beginning.
Right.
Okay, well that explains it.
All right, caller. Thank you so much for coming in and giving us this conversation.
Okay.
We should probably let you go and do our video break, and then we'll come back. And I hope to answer some more questions in the remainder of the show.
In the remainder of the show?
Yeah, meaning we got about 20 minutes left. All right.
Thank you, caller.
Okay, bye-bye.
Goodbye. We didn't ask if he was local.
Well, I know he's local.
He's called before.
Yeah, I know.
So can we roll the videos? If they're ready to go, and if not, we'll start talking again.
If you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
All right, great. Well, we want to speak about the origins of democracy, and it's my assertion that if America is to be a nation attributed to some divinity, it's going to be Athena of Athens. So we spoke earlier about Solon. Let's move on to Cleisthenes. Cleisthenes came about a generation later, and according to Wikipedia, he reformed the constitution of ancient Athens and set it on a democratic footing in 508 BC. Now, Solon was more like in the 550s BCs. So these people may not have met one another. Now,
but he may have read the writings of the former.
Oh, certainly, because he served in the government, and those axons, the written Lazy Susan rules, they would have still been in existence.
Sure.
In fact, there were actually fragments of them in existence by the time Plutarch was writing his story of the lives of other ancient people. So Cleisthenes makes an interesting modification. What he does is he changes the basis on which representation is grouped in the democracy. Previously, people were organized by family units. And what he did is he now organized them by geographic units. And
like our counties or something.
Well, right. So, and we do that here in our government. The smallest level of elected organization, actually maybe cities, then counties, then states, and then finally we have the nation. So there's a hierarchy. Now, the Greek word for this small division, what we might call something like counties, or even maybe precincts, the Greek word for that was deme, and it means people.
D-E-M-E?
I believe so.
Okay.
And so what this means is rule by the deme, meaning rule by the geographic unit, but it also means rule by the people, because the word had the double meaning there. And that's where democracy comes in. And this breaks something, it breaks something that was a problem all the time, and that is that when you have people in government that are representing their family's interests, they cannot compromise. And
it's kind of like the warlords of Afghanistan and Iraq.
there we go. And as well as in the Bible. In the Bible, what you have are the heads of the tribes of Israel. And what did they do with one another?
Constantly warred.
They fought. You know, right in the Bible, we see that Judea and Israel are fighting. And it's because it's a bad idea to base government on bloodlines. And that, in my opinion, is why democracy is not doing well in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places in the Middle East, because they wrote constitutions. I think in some instances they've written parts of their constitution to make sure that certain religious groups are guaranteed certain kinds of representation. And so what they've done is they've enshrined that conflict right into the process of voting for representatives. And these people can't make compromise because they feel like they're compromising the interests of their church and mosque and so on.
Family members. Yeah.
Yes. So Cleisthenes' important reform was to make representation in the government based on where you live. So viewers say democracy, rule by the deme. It's a bit like saying county rule. All right. Is there more to remark on that? So after Cleisthenes made his reforms, it's kind of interesting that he just drops out of history. And I wonder if that's because it was so successful that they weren't writing anymore about, you know, how bad things were. And so the fact that he drops out of history may be a little bit a sign of its success. So then the last person I want to talk about, his name is Pericles. He's got this war helmet on. Pericles comes yet another generation or so later. Pericles fought, I believe, in the great battle against the Persian Empire that happened in like the 490s or so. The Persian Empire to the east tried to attack Greece. Greece was a much smaller country. They were vastly outnumbered, and yet they defeated this huge empire, the largest empire that was on the planet at the time. And it's sometimes attributed to the great enthusiasm and love for their democracy that the Greeks had that made them so valiant in battle to defend what they had. In reality, being a citizen in the Persian Empire was not bad. They were a wealthy empire, but the Greeks, they just didn't want to be under anyone else's rule. So the important thing about Pericles is that during his time, the franchise was opened up to basically all free males. And in fact, they even had a policy of immigration where people who came with valuable skills, artists, or makers of goods could become citizens relatively easily. And so that caused what you might call a brain drain from other Greek city-states. So Athens got some of the best. And during his time, he made another important reform, and that is that when you were serving, the Areopagus, I think it's still the Areopagus, which was ruling on the justice of laws, it now no longer was something that you had to be a member of the aristocracy and voted into at the end of life. The people who were serving in that and to rule on laws could be of any class and any income level because it was a paid position. And when we serve on a jury and we collect a paycheck these days, we should all thank Pericles because he started that when you are doing government service, you can be compensated for your time.
So you think that if we were going to base our, or say that our country is based on a particular deity, it would be Athena?
Well, Athena is the patron goddess of Athens, and these people lived in Athens during the development of government that looks like what we recognize. Now, this government is more participatory than our current government. You know, we have something like 535 persons who write laws, the 435 representatives, and 100 senators.
And what little participation we would want from our citizens, very few of them actually turn out to vote.
It's unfortunate. That is often, though, perhaps the sign of things that aren't too bad. People
complacent.
When things are running smoothly, people have less reason to get out. We are, you know, an amazingly wealthy nation. And we are relatively secure in our borders. We don't fear the Canadians or the Mexicans invading us. We don't remember being invaded by other peoples, and we've forgotten the fact that we've invaded our neighbors. I know very few Americans know that, you know, we took large chunks of property from Mexico at one time. So, for our viewers, this is the case I've made that America, at least if we mean our form of government, is the blessing of the goddess Athena. And so when you're doing your Pledge of Allegiance, substitute that under God with under Athena, and you'll have it a little more correct.
If we're talking about gods who might actually exist, I think I would prefer Ra, the worship of Ra, the Egyptian sun god. At least we can look up in the sky and see it, and we know for a fact that it's responsible for all life on Earth.
All righty.
Human or otherwise. But it doesn't have a democracy built into his worship.
It doesn't have democracy, and neither of these we can interact with real well. However, residents of Tennessee can drive to Nashville, and there you can visit the Parthenon. The Parthenon, it's a replica. It's made out of poured concrete. It is a full-size, and of course the one over Larry's head, that's the real one over in Greece. But in Nashville, you can visit a full-size replica.
Restored totally to mint condition, including...
And inside is a huge statue of Athena. The statue, when I saw it, I thought, she's not real attractive. Her aesthetic didn't strike me as the aesthetic I expected from Greek statuary, but actually when I've seen Athena depicted on Greek coins, it is reflective of how the Greeks did it. I think my taste may be set a little bit more by Roman statuary.
It's incredibly imposing when you walk in the front door and you see this like 40-foot high statue.
Just huge.
Yeah. It's just huge. And it's all just beautiful and really well done.
All right. Well, we're winding up here. We got just a couple minutes left. There's one more point about the reforms. It was actually Cleisthenes made, and that was an interesting institution called ostracification or ostracizing, and this was a thing where they could say, they would hold a vote as to whether or not they were going to have an ostracification vote, and if the vote was yes, then they would vote, and to vote to ostracize someone would say they had to leave the city for 10 years. They didn't lose their property or anything, but it was a way to quell factions that just couldn't seem to compromise. That if someone made everyone so mad that they feared for the stability of the government, they could say, you got to go take a timeout for 10 years. An interesting institution. I'm not really sure I'm in favor of it.
Really?
Let's wind up here. If you can get to the closing remarks faster than I can, start it.
It's time to start wrapping things up. Get out your pen and paper. This has been a Freethought Forum programmed by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Larry Rhodes.
And I'm Faithless Forrest. You can see this show most Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and tell your out-of-town viewers, friends, to view us on CTV KNOX.
Okay, if we can get Sam to put up the phone number for people to leave our messages to us. We'd like to thank our viewers and did you do that already?
You go for it.
Send our thanks to Sam Jonas for technical support, and the staff at CTV Knox, and to all of our callers.
Nuns are the fastest growing religious group in America. Join us down at Barley's.